When Marcus Reed looked at me across that therapy office and called me a complete failure who contributes nothing, he had no idea that the business card our counselor was about to hand him would change everything. What happened next turned our entire marriage upside down. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I sat in the corner chair, the one with the tiny tear in the burgundy fabric, picking at my cuticles while Marcus scrolled through his phone. We'd been coming here for 3 months, and the tension between us had only gotten worse. Sophia Chen Williams, Dr. Coleman called from her doorway. I still used my hyphenated name from before our marriage, something that had become another point of contention between Marcus and me. He thought it was pretentious. I thought it was the last piece of my identity I had left. Marcus didn't look up from his phone as we walked into the familiar office. The walls were painted a calming sage green, lined with diplomas and certifications that Marcus had once joked were probably fake. Dr. Coleman had been practicing for 15 years, specializing in couples therapy and family dynamics. She had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and a way of asking questions that made you examine parts of yourself you'd rather keep hidden. "How has this week been for you both?" Dr. Coleman asked, as we settled into our usual spots on the cream-colored sofa. Marcus sat on the far end, as far from me as possible without being on a different piece of furniture entirely. "Same as always," Marcus said, finally putting his phone face down on the side table. "Sophia's been in her little fantasy world, pretending she's building some empire while I'm the one actually keeping this family afloat." I felt the familiar knot form in my stomach. This was how it always started. Marcus worked as a regional sales manager for a medical equipment company, pulling in about $85,000 a year. It was good money, steady money, and he never let me forget that he was the breadwinner while I played around with my hobbies. "Sophia, how do you respond to that?" Coleman asked gently. I took a breath, trying to find the words that wouldn't immediately escalate into another screaming match. "I've been working on my consulting business for 2 years now. It's not a hobby. It's a joke." Marcus interrupted. "You sit in that spare bedroom for hours, talking to people on video calls about what? Social media strategy? Marketing plans? You made what? $300 last month. I spend more than that on gas." The number stung because it was technically true. Last month had been particularly slow, and I'd only had 2 small clients. But Marcus didn't know about the proposal I'd been working on for weeks, the one that could change everything. He didn't know, because he'd never bothered to ask about the details of what I actually did. "Marcus, I hear that you're frustrated about the financial aspects of your marriage," Dr. Coleman said, "but I'd like to explore how you're communicating that frustration." "Sophia, how does it feel when Marcus describes your work that way? Like I'm invisible," I said quietly. "Like nothing I do matters because it doesn't fit into his definition of success." Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "Success? Sophia, you have to actually accomplish something to call it success. You have to actually contribute something meaningful to call it work." I watched Coleman make a note on her pad. She'd been documenting Marcus's increasingly harsh language for weeks now. What had started as general dismissiveness had evolved into outright cruelty, and I could see the concern growing in her expression session after session. "I do contribute," I said, my voice stronger now. "I manage all the household finances. I coordinate everything with your family. I handle all the medical appointments, the insurance claims. That's just basic adult stuff, Sophia. That's not a contribution. That's just existing. A contribution would be bringing in real money. A contribution would be supporting your husband instead of chasing these ridiculous dreams that aren't going anywhere." The words hit like physical blows. We'd had versions of this conversation dozens of times, but never in front of Coleman, never with such venom in his voice. I felt tears starting to form and blinked them back. I wouldn't cry in front of him again. "Marcus, I'm noticing some very harsh language," Dr. Coleman said. "When you say Sophia's dreams are ridiculous, how do you think that impacts her willingness to share her goals and aspirations with you?" "Maybe that's the point," Marcus said. "Maybe if she faced reality instead of living in some fantasy where she's going to become some big-shot consultant, she'd actually do something useful with her time, Like what? I asked. The question came out sharper than I intended. Like getting a real job, like work at an office somewhere, with a boss and a schedule, and an actual paycheck. Like stop embarrassing me when people ask what my wife does and I have to explain that she's trying to be an entrepreneur. He said the last word like it tasted bad. You're embarrassed by me? The words came out as barely a whisper. Honestly, yeah. When Dave Henderson at work talks about his wife's promotion at the bank, or when Tom mentions his wife's new position at the school district, what am I supposed to say? That my wife made a PowerPoint presentation for some small business owner who probably paid her in gift cards. Dr. Coleman leaned forward slightly. Marcus, I want to pause here. You just said you're embarrassed by your wife. Can you tell me more about what that means to you? It means I married someone I thought had ambition. Real ambition. Not this pretend business that exists only in her head. It means I'm tired of making excuses for why she can't contribute to our household in any meaningful way. I felt something crack inside my chest. We'd been together for 6 years, married for 4, and I'd never heard him speak about me with such contempt. Even during our worst fights, there had always been some underlying affection, some foundation of respect. This felt different. This felt final. I see, Dr. Coleman said carefully. Sophia, I'm curious about your perspective on contribution. How do you define your contributions to this marriage? I looked at Marcus, searching his face for any sign of the man who used to encourage my dreams, who used to say he was proud of my determination. That man seemed to have vanished completely. I used to think contribution meant supporting each other's goals, I said slowly. I used to think it meant building something together, even if the timeline wasn't what we initially expected. I've been working 18-hour days for months, building client relationships, developing strategies, learning new skills. I thought that counted for something. 18 hours of what, though? Marcus demanded. 18 hours of talking to other people who are also pretending to run businesses. 18 hours of making Instagram posts and LinkedIn updates. That's not work, Sophia. That's just expensive procrastination. Dr. Coleman set down her pen and looked directly at Marcus. I want to be very clear about something. The language you're using to describe your wife's efforts is quite harsh. You've called her work a joke, a fantasy, pretend, and procrastination. You've said she doesn't contribute meaningfully and that you're embarrassed by her. How do you think this impacts Sophia's sense of self-worth in this relationship? Marcus shrugged. Maybe it's time she faced some hard truth. Maybe if someone told her the reality of the situation, she'd stop wasting time and start contributing to our actual life instead of this imaginary one she's created. So you see yourself as helping her by being critical? Dr. Coleman asked. I see myself as being honest. Someone has to be the adult in this relationship. Someone has to face reality while she's off playing businesswoman with her little laptop and her Zoom calls with people who are probably just as delusional as she is. I felt the last thread of patience snap. You know what, Marcus? You're right. You're absolutely right about everything. I am worthless. I am a failure. I contribute nothing to this marriage or this household or this world. Is that what you want to hear? Don't be dramatic, he said, but I could see something flicker in his eye. Maybe he realized he'd gone too far, or maybe he was just annoyed that I was getting emotional. No, I'm serious. You've made it very clear how you see me. I'm an embarrassment. I'm delusional. I'm wasting time on imaginary work that doesn't matter. I'm not a real adult because I don't have a boss telling me what to do every day. I get it. Dr. Coleman watched this exchange with growing concern. Sophia, I hear a lot of pain in what you're saying. Marcus, I'm wondering if you can hear that pain too. What I hear is someone who can't handle criticism, Marcus said. What I hear is someone who would rather have an emotional breakdown than admit that maybe, just maybe, this whole consultant thing isn't working out. You want to know what's not working out? I said, standing up from the couch. This marriage isn't working out. Because you don't see me as a partner anymore. You see me as a disappointment that you have to manage and criticize and fix. Sit down, Sophia, Marcus said tiredly. You're being dramatic again. Don't tell me to sit down. Don't tell me I'm being dramatic. You've spent the last 40 minutes explaining to our therapist why I'm a failure as a wife and a human being. You've made it crystal clear that you have no respect for me or anything I do. So don't you dare tell me I'm being dramatic for having feelings about that. Dr. Coleman raised her hand gently. I think we need to take a step back here. Both of you are in a lot of pain, and we're not communicating in a way that's going to help resolve that pain. There's nothing to resolve, Marcus said. Sophia needs to accept reality and start acting like a grown-up. End of story. I looked at him sitting there, so sure of himself, so convinced that he understood everything about my life and my work and my worth. He had no idea what I'd been building. He had no idea about the late nights, the research, the proposals, the networking, the skills I'd developed. He saw only what he wanted to see, a wife who wasn't living up to his expectations. You know what, Marcus? I said, my voice steady now. You're right about one thing. It is time to face reality, but I don't think you're going to like what reality actually looks like. What's that supposed to mean? He asked. Before I could answer, Dr. Coleman's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her eyebrows raised slightly. I'm sorry, but I have an urgent call I need to take. Can we pause for just a moment? She stepped out of the office, leaving Marcus and me alone for the first time in weeks without raised voices or slammed doors between us. The silence felt heavy, loaded with everything we'd said and everything we couldn't take back. You know, Marcus said finally, if you put half the energy into finding a real job that you put into being angry at me, we wouldn't be in this situation. I almost laughed. Even now, even after everything he'd just said, he couldn't resist one more dig, one more way to make this my fault, my failure, my problem to solve. You really have no idea, do you? I said. No idea about what? About who I actually am, about what I actually do, about what I'm actually capable of. He rolled his eyes. Here we go again with the mysterious consultant thing. Sophia, I've seen your computer screen, I've heard your phone calls. You help small businesses with their social media and maybe write some marketing copy. It's not rocket science. Dr. Coleman returned, looking slightly flustered. I apologize for that interruption. Now, where were we? We were talking about reality, I said. Marcus was explaining how I need to face reality about my work and my contributions. Yes, Dr. Coleman said slowly. About that. Marcus, you've been very critical of Sophia's consulting work. You've described it as not real, not meaningful, not contributing to your household. Is that accurate? That's exactly right, Marcus said. She needs to stop pretending and start contributing. Dr. Coleman nodded and reached into her desk drawer. She pulled out a business card and held it for a moment, looking between Marcus and me. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I received that phone call because I have a business emergency, she said. My practice management consultant just had a family crisis and can't complete a project that's due Monday. It's a comprehensive analysis of patient retention strategies and revenue optimization for therapy practices. The contract is worth $15,000, and if it's not completed on time, I'll lose not just this payment, but potentially 3 other clients who are waiting for the results. Marcus looked confused. Okay, but what does that have to do with? Coleman placed the business card face up on the coffee table between us. I was calling to see if she could recommend someone else who could handle a project of this scope on such short notice, she continued. Someone with expertise in healthcare consulting, patient experience optimization, and revenue strategy for professional services. I stared at the card. My card, the one with my name, my phone number, and the logo I'd spent 3 weeks perfecting. The card that represented 2 years of building expertise, developing systems and creating solutions for problems most people didn't even know existed. Marcus picked up the card and read it slowly. His face went through several expressions: confusion, recognition, and then something that might have been shocking. This is, he started. My business card, I finished quietly. The one from my imaginary consulting business. The silence in Dr. Coleman's office stretched like a taut wire. Marcus held my business card between his fingers as if it might burst into flames. His mouth opened and closed twice before any words came out. I don't understand, he said finally. Dr. Coleman, why do you have Sophia's card? Dr. Coleman settled back into her chair, her professional composure intact, despite the obvious tension in the room. Sophia has been my practice management consultant for the past 8 months. She's been instrumental in restructuring my patient scheduling system, optimizing my billing processes, and developing retention strategies that have increased my practice revenue by 37%. Marcus looked from the card to me, then back to Dr. Coleman. That's impossible. Sophia does social media for small businesses. She makes flyers and posts things online. Actually, Dr. Coleman continued, Sophia specializes in operational efficiency and revenue optimization for healthcare professionals. She's developed systems that I've now implemented across my entire practice network. This emergency project I mentioned, it's for a consortium of therapy practices in the Pacific Northwest. The contract value is $15,000 because the scope includes comprehensive analysis for 12 different locations. I watched Marcus process this information. His face went through a series of micro-expressions that I'd learned to read over our years together. Confusion gave way to disbelief, then to something that looked almost like panic. But she never told me. Marcus started, then stopped. His eyes found mine across the coffee table. You never said you were working with Dr. Coleman. You never asked what projects I was working on, I replied quietly. Every time I tried to talk about my work, you called it pretend or told me to focus on getting a real job. That's not. I thought, Marcus fumbled with the word. If you were making real money, why didn't you tell me? Dr. Coleman intervened gently. Marcus, I'm curious about something. You've been coming to these sessions for 3 months, knowing that I'm a successful therapist with a thriving practice. Did you ever wonder how I achieved that success? I assumed you were just good at therapy, Marcus said weakly. I am good at therapy, Dr. Coleman agreed. But being good at therapy doesn't automatically translate to running a successful business. Patient retention, appointment scheduling, insurance processing, marketing strategies, revenue optimization, these are all specialized skills that require expertise I didn't have when I started my practice. Marcus was staring at me now, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. What other clients do you have? It was a question he'd never asked before. In 2 years of building my consulting business, through late nights and early mornings, through proposal writing and client calls, he'd never once asked who I was working with or what problems I was solving for them. Dr. Martinez runs a pediatric practice in downtown Seattle, I said, my voice gaining strength. I helped her reduce patient wait times by 40% and increase her appointment utilization rate by 25%. She refers to other medical professionals to me regularly now. Marcus blinked. Dr. Martinez, our daughter's pediatrician? Yes, she mentioned during Emma's last checkup that she was struggling with scheduling inefficiencies. I offered to take a look at her systems. That was 14 months ago. She's been one of my most consistent clients since then. But you never. Marcus shook his head. You never told me Dr. Martinez was paying you. I tried to tell you about all my clients. You said I was boring you with details about my pretend business. You said you didn't want to hear about my Zoom calls with other people playing entrepreneur. Dr. Coleman made another note. Sophia, can you help Marcus understand the scope of your work? I think there might be some misconceptions about what you actually do. I took a deep breath. Where did I even begin? How do you explain 2 years of work to someone who dismissed it as a hobby? I don't just do social media, Marcus. I analyze operational workflows, identify bottlenecks in patient care systems, develop revenue optimization strategies, and implement process improvements that directly impact healthcare practices' bottom lines. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I don't understand why you didn't just tell me you were making real money. What would you consider real money? I asked. I don't know. More than a few $100s a month, enough to actually help with our expenses. Dr. Coleman and I exchanged a glance. She nodded almost imperceptibly, giving me permission to continue. Last month, the month you said I made $300, I actually invoiced $4,700. The month before that was $6,200. My lowest month in the past year was $3,800. The color drained from Marcus's face. That's impossible. I would have seen that money. I handle our finances. No, Marcus, you handle your income and our joint expenses. I've had my own business banking account for 18 months. I've been keeping detailed records of everything. Why would you hide that from me? His voice cracked slightly. I wasn't hiding it, I was protecting it. The words came out harder than I intended, but they were true. Every time I mentioned doing well with a client, you found a way to minimize it. When I celebrated landing Martinez's contract, you said it was probably a fluke. When I got my first 5-figure project, you said I shouldn't get my hopes up, because it wouldn't last. Marcus looked genuinely confused. I was trying to protect you from disappointment. I didn't want you to get hurt if things didn't work out. By constantly telling me I was going to fail, by helping you stay realistic about your expectations. Dr. Coleman leaned forward. Marcus, I want to explore this protective instinct you mentioned. When you told Sophia her work wasn't real or meaningful, how did you think that was protecting her? Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller than before. I guess I thought if she didn't expect too much, she wouldn't be devastated when it didn't work out. Most new businesses fail, right? I've read the statistics. But what if it did work out? I asked. What if I was actually good at this? What if I was actually building something valuable? Marcus stopped. I guess I never really considered that possibility. Why not? Another long pause. Because I've seen you fail before. The photography thing, the jewelry making, that online course you started, none of those worked out. I felt a familiar sting, but this time it was tempered by something else. Clarity. Maybe. Those weren't failures, Marcus. Those were learning experiences. Each one taught me something about business, about myself, about what I was actually good at, but you never made money from any of them. Because I was figuring out what I wanted to do. I was 26 when I started the photography business. I had no idea what I was doing. The jewelry making taught me about manufacturing and inventory management. The online course taught me about digital marketing and customer acquisition. All of that knowledge went into building my consulting practice. Dr. Coleman nodded approvingly. Sophia, it sounds like you view those previous ventures as part of your professional development, rather than failures. Exactly, but Marcus saw them as proof that I couldn't succeed at anything entrepreneurial. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I just didn't want you to waste years of your life chasing something that wasn't going to work out. Like what I'm doing now, I asked. No. This is different. You're actually making money now. I've been making money for over a year. Marcus, good money. More than I ever made in any traditional job I had before we got married. He looked stunned. More than when you worked at the marketing agency. Significantly more. And I work from home. I set my own schedule. I choose my clients. And I'm building something that's entirely mine. But why didn't you tell me? Why keep it secret? Because every time I tried to share good news about my business, you found a way to tear it down. When I got excited about a new client, you'd remind me not to count on it lasting. When I wanted to invest in better equipment or software, you'd say I was throwing good money after bad. When I talked about expanding my services, you'd suggest I look for a regular job instead. Marcus was quiet, absorbing this. I thought I was being supportive. I thought I was helping you stay grounded. You were crushing me, I said simply. Every single day you were crushing my confidence, and my dreams, and my sense of self-worth. So I stopped sharing. I stopped asking for your opinion. I stopped expecting you to celebrate my successes, or comfort me during setbacks. I just stopped including you in that part of my life. Dr. Coleman spoke carefully. Marcus, I'm hearing that your intentions were to protect Sophia, but the impact was that she felt unsupported and criticized. Can you understand how that disconnect might have damaged your relationship? Marcus nodded slowly. I guess I can see that. But Sophia, if you were doing so well, why didn't you just prove me wrong? Why didn't you show me the bank statements, or the contract? Because I shouldn't have to prove my worth to my husband, I said. I shouldn't have to provide evidence that I deserve basic respect and support. You should have believed in me because you love me, not because I could show you a profit and loss statement. But if I had known that I was capable of success, that I actually understood business, that that I wasn't just some delusional housewife playing pretend. The anger was creeping back into my voice. Those are things you should have known about me already, Marcus. We've been together for 6 years. You should know who I am. I thought I did know you. You knew the version of me that you created in your head, the version that needed your protection and guidance and constant reality checks. But that's not who I actually am. Dr. Coleman intervened. This is a lot of information to process, Marcus. You're learning that your wife has been more successful than you realized, and that your attempts to be protective were actually harmful. How are you feeling right now? Marcus ran his hands through his hair, confused, angry, embarrassed. He looked at me. Why didn't you correct me? All those times I said you weren't contributing. Why didn't you just tell me how much money you were making? Because it shouldn't have mattered. My worth as a person, and as your wife, shouldn't be determined by my income. But since you brought it up, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Do you want to see the reality of my pretend business? I turned the screen toward him. His eyes widened as he saw the account balance. That's just from the last 3 months, and it doesn't include the retirement account I've been funding or the emergency savings I've been building. Marcus stared at the numbers. This is more than I make. It has been for the past 8 months. Some months, it's significantly more. But how? I mean, what exactly do you do that's worth this much money? It was a fair question, and for the first time in our conversation, it didn't feel like an attack. I solve problems that cost healthcare practices thousands of dollars every month, I explained. When Dr. Coleman's appointment scheduling system was inefficient, she was losing revenue from missed appointments and gaps in her schedule. When Dr. Martinez couldn't process insurance claims quickly enough, she had cash flow problems that were affecting her ability to operate. When the urgent care clinic in Bellevue couldn't manage their patient flow, they were losing patients to competitors. And you fix those problems. I analyze their systems, identify the inefficiencies, and develop solutions. Sometimes it's new software, sometimes it's process changes, sometimes it's staff training, but the result is always the same. They make more money and provide better patient care. Marcus was quiet for a long time, processing this information. I had no idea medical practices needed that kind of help. Most people don't. That's why there's so much opportunity in this field. Healthcare providers are experts in medicine, not business operation. They need people who understand both the technical aspects of healthcare and the principles of business efficiency, and you understand both. I've spent 2 years learning everything I could about healthcare operation. I've taken courses, earned certifications, attended conferences, networked with other consultants and healthcare professionals. I've studied reimbursement models, compliance requirements, patient privacy laws, and operational best practice. You did all that while I was telling you to get a real job, Marcus said quietly. Yes, and you never once told me to shut up or mind my own business. I tried to explain what I was doing. You weren't interested in listening. Dr. Coleman checked her watch. We're running over our usual time, but I think this conversation is crucial. Marcus, how are you processing all of this information? Marcus looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I feel like I don't know who you are anymore. I'm the same person I've always been. I'm just successful now despite your lack of support, not because of it. That's not fair. I've supported you in other ways. Like how? I've paid all the bills while you were building your business. I've given you the space and time to work on your project. You've resented every dollar you spent, and made me feel guilty for every hour I worked. That's not support, Marcus. That's martyrdom. He flinched. I didn't mean to make you feel guilty, but you did. Every time you came home from work and found me on a client call, you'd make some comment about how nice it must be to chat with friends all day. Every time I worked late, you'd suggest I was avoiding my real responsibility. Every time I mentioned a business expense, you'd remind me how much money I wasn't making. I was frustrated, Marcus admitted. I felt like I was carrying all the financial responsibility while you were pursuing a dream that might never pay off, but it was paying off. You just refused to see it because you'd already decided I was going to fail. Dr. Coleman spoke up. Marcus, it sounds like you made some assumptions about Sophia's business based on your past experiences with her previous ventures. Is that accurate? Maybe, Marcus said reluctantly. I guess I thought this would be like the other times. What would have been different if you'd approached this venture with curiosity instead of skepticism? Dr. Coleman asked. Marcus considered this. I probably would have asked more questions about what she was actually doing. I probably would have tried to understand her work instead of dismissing it. And how might that have changed your relationship dynamic? I guess we would have been partners instead of. He paused, searching for the right words. Instead of what? I prompted. Instead of me being the responsible adult and you being the dreamer I had to manage. It was the first honest thing he'd said all session. The admission hung in the air between us like smoke. Marcus had finally acknowledged what I'd been living with for years. He saw himself as the responsible adult managing a dreamer. The weight of that dynamic, now spoken aloud, felt heavier than I'd expected. So what happens now? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Where do we go from here? Dr. Coleman glanced at her clock. I think we need to schedule some additional sessions to work through this. What we've uncovered today is significant, and it's going to take time to process and address. I don't think time is going to fix this, I said quietly. Both Marcus and Dr. Coleman looked at me. I mean, yes, we need to talk through things, but the fundamental issue isn't going to change with more therapy sessions. What do you mean? Marcus asked. The fundamental issue is that you don't respect me. You don't see me as an equal partner. You see me as someone who needs to be managed and corrected and protected from my own poor judgment. Marcus started to protest, but I held up my hand. Let me finish. Today you found out that I'm more financially successful than you are. You found out that I've been building something substantial while you were telling me to get a real job, but instead of apologizing for doubting me, instead of acknowledging that you were wrong about my capabilities, your first instinct was to ask why I didn't prove you wrong sooner. That's exactly what you did, Marcus. Even faced with evidence that I'm competent and successful, you found a way to make it my fault that you didn't know about it. Dr. Coleman nodded thoughtfully. Sophia raises an important point. Marcus, when you learned about her success, what was your immediate emotional response? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I felt blindsided, like she'd been lying to me. Lying how? I asked. By not telling me the truth about how much money you were making. But I wasn't lying. I was protecting my business from your constant negativity. There's a difference. It feels the same to me. Dr. Coleman intervened. Marcus, I want to explore this feeling of being lied to. Sophia has explained that she stopped sharing details about her work because of your reaction. Can you understand why she might have made that choice? I guess, Marcus said reluctantly, but if she'd just shown me the bank statements earlier, we could have avoided all this conflict. Could we have? I asked. Real, if I'd shown you my income 6 months ago, would you have suddenly started respecting my work and supporting my goals? Marcus considered this. Probably not immediately, but eventually yes. Why eventually? Why not immediately? Because it would have taken time for me to adjust my thinking. Adjust your thinking about what? About your capabilities, about whether you could actually build a successful business. I felt a familiar surge of anger. Do you hear yourself? You're saying it would have taken time for you to acknowledge that I'm competent at something I've been doing successfully for over a year. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant, and that's exactly the problem. Your respect for me is conditional on my ability to prove myself by your standards, but your standards keep changing, and they're always designed to keep me in the position of having to earn something I should have already had. Your belief in me. Dr. Coleman made a note. Sophia, it sounds like you're describing a pattern where you have to continuously prove your worth rather than being accepted as inherently valuable. Exactly, and it's exhausting. I've spent years trying to earn Marcus's respect and support instead of receiving it as a basic part of our partnership. Marcus looked genuinely confused. But doesn't everyone have to prove themselves? Doesn't everyone have to earn respect through their action? Not from their spouse, I said immediately. Not in a healthy marriage. Your spouse should be the person who believes in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. Your spouse should be your biggest supporter, not your harshest critic. But I was trying to be realistic. I was trying to help you avoid disappointment by constantly predicting my failure, by helping you prepare for different outcomes. Dr. Coleman leaned forward. Marcus, I want to ask you something. In your work as a sales manager, How do you motivate your team? Do you prepare them for failure, or do you encourage them to succeed? I encourage them, obviously. I help them set goals and celebrate their wins. I provide training and support when they're struggling. And when someone on your team has a new idea or wants to try a different approach, how do you respond? I listen to their proposal, ask questions about their strategy, maybe offer some guidance or resources if they need them. So you approach your professional relationships with curiosity and support, Dr. Coleman observed. But you approached Sophia's business ventures with skepticism and criticism. Can you see the difference? Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. I guess I treated my employees better than I treated my wife. Why do you think that is? Dr. Coleman asked. Because, Marcus struggled with the words, because at work I want people to succeed. Their success reflects well on me, as a manager. And at home, another long pause. I guess I was afraid that if Sophia failed it would reflect poorly on me, like I should have talked her out of it or something. I stared at him. So this was about your reputation, about how you'd look if I didn't succeed. Partly maybe. I didn't want people to think I was irresponsible for letting my wife chase unrealistic dreams instead of contributing to our household income. Letting me in. The words came out sharp. Marcus, you don't get to let me do anything. I'm an adult. I make my own decisions about my career and my life. I know that. I just meant, you meant exactly what you said. You think you have the authority to let me, or not let me pursue my goals. That's not a partnership. That's not even a friendship. That's a parent-child relationship. Dr. Coleman nodded. Sophia, you're identifying a power dynamic that seems central to your relationship struggles. Marcus, can you see how your language suggests you view yourself as having authority over Sophia's choices? Marcus looked uncomfortable. I've never thought of it that way, but maybe. I guess I do feel responsible for our family's financial decisions. There's a difference between participating in financial decisions and controlling them. I said, there's a difference between being concerned about our finances and sabotaging my attempts to contribute to them. I wasn't sabotaging anything. You weren't supporting anything either, and when someone you're supposed to love is trying to build something important to them, lack of support feels a lot like sabotage. Marcus was quiet, processing this. I thought I was being practical. You were being controlling, and dismissive, and condescending. I never meant to be any of those things. Intent doesn't erase impact, Marcus. Your intentions don't matter if the result is that I felt belittled and unsupported for 2 years. Dr. Coleman checked her note. We're uncovering some deep patterns here. Marcus, you've acknowledged that you treated Sophia differently than you would treat a colleague or employee. You've also acknowledged that your concerns were partly about how her potential failure might reflect on you. Can you see how these attitudes might have affected Sophia's experience in your marriage? I'm starting to, Marcus said quietly, but I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to change the way I think about these things. That's something we can work on, Dr. Coleman said. But first, we need to acknowledge the full scope of the damage that's been done. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, for the first time in months. Do you want to know what the worst part is? Tell me. The worst part is that I succeeded in spite of you, not because of you. The person who should have been my biggest cheerleader became the voice in my head telling me I wasn't good enough. I had to fight through your doubts and criticisms every single day. I had to build my confidence back up after every conversation where you reminded me that I was probably going to fail. Marcus's face crumpled slightly. I didn't know I was doing that. But you were, and the fact that you didn't know makes it worse, not better. It means you were so convinced of my incompetence that you didn't even recognize how destructive your words were. I'm sorry, he said, and for the first time, it sounded genuine. I'm really sorry, Sophia. I had no idea I was hurting you that badly. I tried to tell you, multiple times, but you always found a way to make it about your intentions, instead of my experience. Dr. Coleman intervened gently. Marcus, this awareness of the impact you've had is important. But I want to ask both of you, do you think this marriage can recover from this pattern of interaction? The question hung between us like a challenge. I'd been asking myself the same thing for months, but hearing it out loud made it more real somehow. I don't know, I said honestly. I know I can't go back to the way things were. I can't go back to feeling like I have to hide my successes or downplay my accomplishments to make Marcus comfortable. I wouldn't want you to, Marcus said quickly. Now that I know how successful you are, I want to support you. I want to be proud of what you've built. But that's the problem, I said. Your support is conditional on my success. What happens the next time I want to try something new? What happens if I have a bad month or lose a client? Will you go back to telling me to get a real job? Marcus opened his mouth to deny it, then closed it again. He couldn't promise that he wouldn't, and we both knew it. I want to change, he said finally. I want to learn how to be a better partner. Wanting to change and actually changing are two different things, I said, and I'm not sure I have the energy to wait around while you figure out how to respect me. Dr. Coleman spoke carefully. Sophia, it sounds like you're saying you need to see concrete changes in Marcus's behavior, not just promises of change. Exactly, and I need to see them soon. I can't keep living in a marriage where I feel like I'm constantly being evaluated and judged. What would concrete change look like to you? Dr. Coleman asked. I thought about it for a moment. It would look like Marcus asking about my work because he's genuinely interested. Not because he's looking for problems. It would look like him celebrating my successes without immediately pointing out potential pitfalls. It would look like him trusting my judgment instead of assuming I need his guidance. And Marcus, what would you need from Sophia to help rebuild this relationship? Marcus was quiet for a long time. I guess I'd need her to forgive me for not believing in her, and I'd need her to be patient while I learn how to be the kind of partner she deserves. Forgiveness is earned, not requested, I said, and patience is something I've been giving you for years. I don't have much left. The weight of that admission settled over all of us. We'd reached a crossroads, and everyone in the room knew it. I think, Dr. Coleman said carefully, that you both need some time to process what we've discussed today. This has been an intense session with some major revelations. What happens next? Marcus asked. That depends on what you both want, Dr. Coleman said. We can schedule individual sessions to help you each work through your feelings. Or we can continue with couples therapy if you both want to try to rebuild this relationship. I looked at Marcus, this man I'd loved for 6 years, who'd supported me in some ways while tearing me down in others. The man who'd shared my bed while questioning my dreams. The man who claimed to love me while consistently betting against my success. I need some time to think, I said. I need to figure out if I want to keep fighting for this marriage, or if I want to put that energy into something else. Marcus's face went pale. Something else like what? Like building the life I want instead of trying to fix the one I have. The drive home from Dr. Coleman's office was the longest 23 minutes of our marriage. Marcus gripped the steering wheel like it might fly away, while I stared out the passenger window at the Seattle skyline. Neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't comfortable. It was loaded with everything we'd said and everything we hadn't. When we pulled into our driveway, Marcus finally broke. Sophia, we need to talk about this. We just spent 90 minutes talking about it. Not really. We spent 90 minutes having things explained to us by Dr. Coleman. We haven't actually talked to each other. I looked at our house, the craftsman-style home we'd bought 3 years ago, the one with the bay windows I'd fallen in love with, and the kitchen Marcus had insisted on renovating. It felt like looking at someone else's life. What do you want me to say, Marcus? I want you to tell me we can work through this. I want you to tell me that what we have is worth fighting for. Is it? I asked, turning to face him. Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like we've been fighting for years. The only difference is that now you know I was winning. Marcus flinched. That's not fair. None of this is fair. It wasn't fair when you dismissed my words. It wasn't fair when you made me feel small for having dreams. And it's not fair that I'm the one who has to decide whether this marriage is salvageable. We sat in the car for another few minutes before Marcus finally turned off the engine. Inside the house, everything looked exactly the same, but something fundamental had shifted. The space that had felt like home that morning now felt like a stage where we'd been performing a marriage that only one of us knew was fake. Marcus went straight to the kitchen and opened a beer. I headed upstairs to my office. The room he'd always called the spare bedroom, as if my work was temporary and would eventually be replaced by something more legitimate. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. There were 3 emails from potential clients, 2 contract amendments to review, and a message from Dr. Martinez about expanding our working relationship to include her partner's practice. Normal, everyday reminders that my business was real and thriving, regardless of what had happened in therapy. Marcus appeared in the doorway, beer in hand. "Can I come in?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk. He looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. The whiteboard covered with project timelines, the filing cabinet full of client contracts, the professional lighting setup for video calls, the medical journals stacked on the bookshelf. "I never really looked at this room before," he said quietly. "You looked at it. You just saw what you expected to see instead of what was actually here." Marcus sat down heavily. "Tell me about your work. Really tell me. I want to understand what you actually do." It was a reasonable request, but it felt like too little too late. "Why now? Why is it suddenly important to you?" "Because I realize today that I don't actually know my wife. I know the version of you that I created in my head. But I don't know the real you." I studied his face, looking for signs of genuine curiosity versus performative interest. "Okay. But I'm not going to give you the sanitized version. I'm going to tell you everything, including the parts that might make you uncomfortable. I'm ready." "No, you're not. But I'll tell you anyway." I swiveled my chair to face him directly. 6 months ago I was contacted by a hospital network in Portland. They were hemorrhaging money due to operational inefficiencies. Patients waiting hours for basic procedures, equipment sitting idle while staff scrambled to find what they needed, insurance claims getting delayed and denied because of poor documentation. Marcus nodded, trying to look engaged. "They brought me in for a consultation that was supposed to last 3 days. I ended up staying for 2 weeks because every department I analyzed revealed more problems. The emergency department alone was losing $40,000 a month in preventable delays." "What did you do?" "I redesigned their entire patient flow system. I created protocols for equipment allocation, streamlined their documentation processes, and trained their staff on efficiency metrics. The result was a 30% reduction in patient wait times and a 22% increase in revenue per patient." "How much did they pay you for that?" $85,000, plus a retainer agreement for ongoing consultation worth $20,000 per quarter. Marcus nearly choked on his beer. "You made $85,000 in 2 weeks. I made $85,000 by solving problems that were costing them millions. There's a difference. But that's..." He did quick math in his head. "That's more than I make in a year. Some projects are. Others are smaller. But Marcus, the point isn't the money. The point is that I'm good at this. I'm really, really good at it. And you never once considered that possibility." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Why didn't you tell me about the hospital project?" "Because the week before I left for Portland, you suggested I apply for a part-time job at Target to help with our expenses." The words hung between us like an accusation. Marcus's face went through several expressions before settling on something that looked like shame. "I remember that conversation," he said quietly. "You'd just had a slow week with clients. And you thought I should give up and get a real job. While I was literally packing for the biggest contract of my career, you were suggesting I fold t-shirts for $12 an hour. I didn't know about the contract. Because you never asked. You assumed that if something important was happening, you'd automatically know about it. But I'd stopped telling you about opportunities, because you always found reasons why they wouldn't work out." Marcus set down his beer and looked around the room again. "What else don't I know? Do you really want the full list?" "Yes." I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a folder. "I've been invited to speak at 3 healthcare conferences this year. I'm co-authoring a paper on operational efficiency in small medical practices. I've been offered a partnership in a consulting firm based in San Francisco, which I turned down because I prefer running my own practice. And I'm being courted by 2 different software companies, who want to license my patient flow optimization system. Marcus stared at the folder. Do you have a system that software companies want to license? I developed it for Dr. Coleman's practice, then refined it for my other client. It reduces appointment scheduling conflicts by 70% and increases patient satisfaction scores significantly. The licensing deals being discussed are worth mid-six figures annually. Mid-six figures? Like $500,000, like between $400,000 and $700,000. Depending on implementation scope and market penetration. Marcus looked like he might be sick. So you're not just successful. You're about to be wealthy. I'm already wealthy, Marcus. I've been wealthy for months. The licensing deals would just make me more so. But our lifestyle, we don't live like wealthy people. Because I was trying to avoid exactly this conversation. I was trying to build my success quietly. So you couldn't sabotage it. I wouldn't have sabotaged your success. You sabotaged my confidence for 2 years. You sabotaged my willingness to share my dreams with you. You sabotaged my ability to celebrate achievements in my own home. What makes you think you wouldn't have sabotaged my actual success? Marcus stood up and began pacing. This is insane. My wife is about to become a millionaire. And I had no idea. I've been treating you like a failure while you were building an empire. I'm not about to become anything. I already am these things. The licensing deals are just one opportunity among many. But Marcus, that's not the point. How is that not the point? Because you're doing it again. You're focusing on the money instead of understanding what any of this means about who I am as a person. He stopped pacing. What does it mean? It means I'm ambitious. It means I'm intelligent. It means I'm capable of building something significant. It means I have valuable skills and insights that other people are willing to pay substantial amounts of money to access. It means I'm not the incompetent dreamer you've been treating me like. I never thought you were incompetent. You treated me like I was. There's no functional difference. Marcus sat back down, looking defeated. I don't know how to fix this, Sophia. I don't know how to undo 2 years of getting everything wrong. Maybe you can't fix it. Maybe some things can't be undone. Do you really believe that? I considered the question seriously. I believe that trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to rebuild. And you didn't just break my trust in you. You broke my trust in my own judgment. What do you mean? I mean that every time you questioned my decisions or predicted my failure, a part of me wondered if you were right, even when I was succeeding. Even when clients were happy and contracts were being renewed, I still heard your voice in my head telling me it wouldn't last. Marcus's face crumpled. I made you doubt yourself. Constantly. Do you know how hard it is to negotiate a 6-figure contract when your husband's voice is in your head reminding you that you're probably not worth it? I never said you weren't worth it. You said my work wasn't worth anything. You said my time wasn't worth anything. You said my dreams weren't worth pursuing. How exactly did you think that would affect my sense of self-worth? Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. I destroyed us, didn't I? You damaged us. Whether it's destroyed depends on what happens next. What needs to happen next? I looked at him sitting across from my desk in the room where I'd built something he'd never believed I could achieve. You need to figure out why you needed me to be small. You need to understand why my success threatens you so much that you had to sabotage it. I wasn't threatened by your success. I was trying to protect you. From what? From failure, from disappointment, from people taking advantage of you. Or maybe you were protecting yourself from having a wife who didn't need you the way you thought she should. The words hit him like a physical blow. That's not. I don't. Think about it, Marcus. When I was struggling with my business, when I was having doubts and setbacks, you felt needed. You felt like the stable one, the practical one, the one holding everything together. But to be successful, I don't need that kind of protection. Successful me is an equal partner, not someone who needs to be managed. I liked feeling needed, he admitted quietly. And I needed to feel supported. Those two needs were incompatible. And your need was. Marcus looked around the room one more time, taking in all the evidence of my success that he'd chosen not to see. What do I do now? How do I become the kind of husband who supports his wife instead of undermining her? I don't know if you can, and I don't know if I have the energy to help you figure it out. So what are you saying? I'm saying that for the first time in 2 years I feel successful and confident and proud of what I've built, and I need to decide whether I want to risk that feeling by trying to fix a marriage with someone who spent years tearing it down. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went pale. What is it? I asked. Text from my brother. He's asking if we want to go to dinner this weekend to celebrate your consulting success. Apparently word is getting around that you're doing well. Word has been around for months, you just weren't listening. Marcus stared at his phone. Everyone knew except me. Everyone who bothered to pay attention knew. Everyone who asked questions and listened to the answers knew. Everyone who treated me like an intelligent adult capable of professional success knew, including my own family. Your family has been supportive of my work from the beginning. Your mother asks about my clients every time we talk. Your brother referred 2 people to me last year. They did? Marcus, your family has been proud of my success while you've been embarrassed by my attempts to achieve it. What does that tell you? He didn't answer, but I could see the realization dawning on his face. The problem wasn't my work or my capabilities or my approach to business. The problem was him. And it had always been him. I think, I said carefully, that we both need some space to process what happened today. Are you asking me to leave? I'm asking you to give me some time to figure out what I want my life to look like going forward. With or without me. With or without you. Marcus stood up slowly, like he was carrying a heavy weight. I love you, Sophia. I know I screwed this up. But I do love you. I know you do, but love isn't enough if it comes with conditions, and I can't keep trying to earn something I should have always had. He left the room without another word, and I heard him moving around downstairs, probably packing a bag. The sound of his footsteps felt like the closing of a chapter, though I wasn't sure yet if it was the end of the book. I turned back to my computer and opened the email from the software company. The licensing deal was even better than I'd expected. Guaranteed minimum payments, performance bonuses and equity options. It was the kind of opportunity that could set me up for life. The kind of success I'd dreamed about during all those nights when Marcus was telling me to be realistic. As I drafted my response, I realized that for the first time in years, I was making a major career decision without worrying about Marcus's reaction. It felt like freedom. 3 days after Marcus left, my phone started ringing. First it was his mother, Helen, calling to congratulate me on the software licensing deal that I hadn't even announced yet. Then his brother David texted asking if I needed anything while going through this rough patch. Somehow, word of our separation had spread through Marcus's family faster than news of my business success ever had. I was working from my kitchen table, reviewing contracts for 2 new clients, when Helen called back. Sophia, honey, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but it's about time Marcus found out what the rest of us have known for months. What do you mean? I asked, though I had a feeling I knew where this conversation was headed. That you're brilliant at what you do. David's friend Robert owns that urgent care clinic in Tacoma, the one you helped with their patient flow issues. He's been telling everyone who'll listen that you saved his business. I nearly dropped my phone. Robert never told me he knew David. Small world, apparently. But Sophia, that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because my stubborn son is sitting in David's guest room feeling sorry for himself instead of fighting for his marriage. Helen, I appreciate you calling, but this isn't something that can be fixed with a conversation. I know that, but it might be something that can be fixed with understanding. Can I ask you something? Of course. How long has Marcus been undermining your work? The directness of the question caught me off guard. You know about that, honey? I've been watching my son dismiss your achievements for 2 years. Every time we asked about your business, he'd change the subject or make some comment about you playing entrepreneur. We stopped asking him, and started asking you directly. I had no idea you knew. And we were proud of you for persisting despite his attitude. But I think I understand why Marcus acted the way he did. And I think you deserve to know. I set down my pen and gave Helen my full attention. I'm listening. Marcus's father left when Marcus was 12. Did you know that? He mentioned it. But he never talked about details. Richard was a dreamer, always chasing the next big idea. He convinced me to invest our savings in one failed scheme after another. When he finally left, we had nothing. I had to work 3 jobs to keep food on the table while Marcus and David were growing up. I felt a chill of understanding wash over me. Marcus was scared I'd do the same thing. I think so, but more than that. I think he was scared he'd end up like me, working himself to death while his spouse chased dreams that never materialized. Only he got it backwards. What do you mean? Richard was all dreams and no execution. You're all executed with the dreams to back it up. Marcus couldn't see the difference because he was too busy being terrified of history repeating itself. I sat with this information for a moment. It didn't excuse Marcus's behavior, but it did provide context I'd never had before. That explains the fear, I said finally. But it doesn't explain the cruelty. No, it doesn't. That's something Marcus is going to have to answer for himself. But I wanted you to understand that his reaction to your success wasn't really about you. It was about ghosts he's been carrying around for 20 years. Helen, I appreciate you telling me this, but understanding why Marcus acted the way he did doesn't change how his actions affected me. I know that, sweetheart, and I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm just asking you to consider whether the man who hurt you is the same man who married you, or if fear turned him into someone else. After Helen hung up, I couldn't concentrate on work. I kept thinking about Marcus at 12 years old, watching his father disappear and leaving his mother to pick up the pieces. I thought about the man I'd fallen in love with, who used to encourage my photography business and celebrate small wins. When had that man been replaced by someone who saw my ambition as a threat? My laptop chimed with a video call notification. Dr. Martinez's name appeared on the screen, and I accepted the call with relief. Talking about work would be a welcome distraction. Sophia, I have exciting news. Martinez said, her face bright with enthusiasm. The practice management software company you recommended, they want to partner with us on a pilot program for your scheduling optimization system. That's fantastic, Carmen. What kind of timeline are they thinking? 6 months initial pilot, with potential for a 3-year contract if the results meet their projections. But here's the really exciting part. They want you to lead the entire implementation process, not just for our practice but for 12 pilot sites across the Pacific Northwest. I felt a familiar surge of excitement. This was exactly the kind of opportunity I'd been working toward for 2 years. What's the scope of the project? Full operational analysis and optimization for all 12 sites. You'd be working directly with their software development team to customize the system based on your methodologies. The contract value is, she paused dramatically, $350,000 over 18 months. I stared at the screen, trying to process the number. Combined with my existing contracts and the licensing deal I'd accepted yesterday, this would put my annual income well into 7 figures. Sophia? Are you there? I'm here. That's incredible, Carmen. When do they need an answer? End of the week. But Sophia, there's one catch. The project would require significant travel. You'd need to be on site at different locations for about 40% of the contract period. How much travel are we talking about? Portland, Vancouver, Spokane, and a few smaller cities, probably 2 weeks per month away from home. I thought about this. A year ago, extensive travel would have been impossible. Marcus would have objected to the disruption to our routine, the additional expenses, the time away from home. But now I was making decisions for myself, and the idea of traveling for work felt exciting rather than problematic. Can I give you an answer by Friday? Absolutely. And Sophia, congratulations. This is a huge recognition of your expertise. After the call ended, I sat in my kitchen surrounded by the evidence of my success. Signed contracts, project proposals, revenue projections that exceeded anything I'd dreamed possible 2 years ago. For the first time since the therapy session, I felt genuinely happy, not vindicated or angry or hurt, just happy about the life I was building. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Can we talk? I've been thinking about everything, and I need to tell you some things. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I'm not ready to talk yet. Please, Sophia, I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did and why I did it. Understanding doesn't undo damage. I know, but maybe it's a start. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I called my sister Emma, who lived in Portland, and had been my sounding board throughout the worst parts of my marriage. He wants to talk, I said without preamble when she answered. Do you want to talk to him? I don't know. Part of me is curious about what he has to say, but part of me thinks it doesn't matter. What would change if he said all the right things? Nothing. That's the problem. Even if he apologizes perfectly, even if he promises to change, even if he means every word, I can't unknow what I know now, which is that he was capable of treating me that way for 2 years, that he could watch me work 18-hour days and call it playing around, that he could see me excited about opportunities and find ways to tear down my confidence. Emma was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? Tell me. I think you're grieving the marriage you thought you had, but I also think you're discovering who you are when you're not constantly defending yourself. She was right. The 3 days since Marcus left had been the most peaceful I'd felt in months. I'd worked without interruption, made business decisions based solely on what was best for my career, and celebrated victories without worrying about anyone else's reaction. Emma, I got offered another major contract today, $350,000. Holy shit, Sophia, that's amazing. It would require a lot of travel, 2 weeks per month for 18 months. Are you going to take it? I think so. The work sounds challenging, and the money is incredible, but Marcus would hate the travel schedule. Good thing Marcus doesn't get a vote anymore. The simple truth of that statement hit me like a revelation. Marcus didn't get a vote anymore. For the first time in 6 years, I was free to make decisions based entirely on what I wanted. That evening, I was reviewing the travel requirements for the new contract when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole I could see Marcus standing on our porch, holding what looked like a folder. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. What do you want? I want to show you something. Please, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let him into the living room. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, like he hadn't slept since he left. I've been doing research, he said, opening the folder, about your work, your clients, your industry. I wanted to understand what I was too stubborn to see before. He spread several printed articles across the coffee table, headlines about healthcare consulting, industry reports on operational efficiency, case studies of successful practice optimization projects. This article from Healthcare Management magazine features a case study that sounds exactly like the work you did for Doc Coleman, he said, pointing to one of the printouts. And this report from the American Medical Association talks about how consultants like you are transforming small practices. I looked at the papers without touching them. What's your point, Marcus? My point is that you're not just successful, you're exceptional. You're doing work that's changing how healthcare practices operate. You're solving problems that affect real people's lives. I tried to tell you that. I know, and I should have listened, but I want you to know that I understand now. I understand that what you do matters, that you're genuinely talented at it, and that I was an idiot for not seeing it sooner. Okay. Is that all? Marcus looked confused by my lack of reaction. Aren't you glad that I finally got it? Too little, too late, doesn't deserve applause, Marcus. But it's something, right? Is it progress? I sat down across from him, feeling suddenly exhausted. Do you know what I realized while you were gone? What? That I don't need you to understand my work for it to be valuable. I don't need your approval for my success to be real. I spent 2 years trying to prove myself to you, but the only person I needed to prove anything to was myself. So where does that leave us? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if there's a version of this marriage that works for both of us. Or if we've grown into people who are fundamentally incompatible. Marcus leaned forward. We're not incompatible, we just lost our way for a while. Or did you show me exactly who you are when you feel threatened? I was scared, Sophia. My dad left my mom with nothing after chasing dreams that never materialized. I was terrified you'd do the same thing. Your mother told me about your father, and I understand that your fear came from somewhere real. But Marcus, fear doesn't excuse cruelty. Being scared of abandonment doesn't justify trying to sabotage my confidence. I wasn't trying to sabotage anything. Intent versus impact. We've had this conversation. Marcus gathered up his printouts. What do I have to do? How do I fix this? I don't think you can fix it. I think you can only decide what kind of person you want to be going forward. And I can decide whether that person is someone I want to be married to. And how do I show you what kind of person I want to be? I thought about the contract offer, about the travel schedule, about all the opportunities that lay ahead of me. Start by supporting my decisions even when they're inconvenient for you. What do you mean? I was offered a major contract today. It would require significant travel and would change our routine dramatically. The old Marcus would find a dozen reasons why it's a bad idea. What would the new Marcus say? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. How significant is the travel? 2 weeks per month. For 18 months. I watched his face carefully, looking for any sign of the man who used to discourage my ambitions. He took a deep breath. That sounds like an incredible opportunity. Are you excited about it? Very. Then I think you should take, even though it would mean less time together while we're trying to fix our marriage, even though it would mean less time together, your career matters more than my convenience. It was the right answer, but I wasn't sure if he meant it or if he was just telling me what he thought I wanted to hear. The distinction felt crucial. I'm going to take it, I said. And I'm going to take it whether we stay married or not. I hope we stay married. But either way, I hope the project is everything you want it to be. For the first time in days, Marcus sounded like the man I'd fallen in love with. Whether it was enough remained to be seen. The next morning I woke up to find Marcus in our kitchen making coffee. He'd let himself in with his key sometime before dawn, and the familiar domestic scene felt surreal after everything that had happened. I brought breakfast, he said quietly, gesturing to a bag from the bakery down the street. Those almond croissants you like. I accepted the coffee but remained standing, creating physical distance between us. We agreed you'd give me space. I know, but I couldn't sleep, and I kept thinking about what you said yesterday, about supporting your decisions even when they're inconvenient for me. Marcus, bringing me pastries isn't the same as changing fundamental patterns in our relationship. I know that too, but I wanted to tell you that I called Dr. Coleman this morning. I scheduled individual therapy sessions, twice a week for the next month. I looked at him more carefully. He was serious about this. Why? Because you were right about something. I need to figure out why I needed you to be small. I need to understand why your success felt threatening instead of exciting. It was a step in the right direction, but I'd learned to be cautious about Marcus's promise. Individual therapy is good, but it doesn't change what already happened between us. I'm not trying to erase what happened. I'm trying to make sure it never happens again. My phone rang before I could respond. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize with a Seattle area code. Sophia Chen Williams, this is Jennifer Walsh from Pacific Northwest Healthcare Consortium. Dr. Martinez gave me your number. Hi Jennifer, how can I help you? I'm calling about the multi-site optimization project. I know Carmen discussed the basics with you, but I wanted to personally extend the offer and discuss some additional opportunities that have come up. I moved to my office, with Marcus following at a respectful distance. I'm very interested in the project. What additional opportunities are you referring to? Well, word of your methodologies has spread beyond our initial consortium. We've had inquiries from healthcare systems in California and Texas about similar optimization projects. If our pilot program goes well, we're looking at potential expansion that could be worth several $1 million in contracts over the next 3 years. I sat down hard in my desk chair. Several $1 million. The numbers were starting to feel abstract, like playing money in a board game. That's significant, I managed. It is, but I want to be transparent about what this would mean for your business. Success at this level would likely require you to expand beyond solo consulting. You'd need to hire staff, possibly open an office, And definitely travel extensively. It's a completely different scale than what you're doing now. After Jennifer hung up, I stared at my computer screen for a long time. The opportunity she'd described wasn't just about money, it was about building something that could outlast me, something that could help healthcare systems across the country operate more efficiently. Marcus knocked softly on my office doorframe. How did that call go? It went well. Very well. I turned to face him. They're talking about expansion opportunities that could be worth millions of dollars. Millions? Marcus's eyebrows shot up. That's incredible, Sophia. It would also mean hiring employees, possibly relocating, definitely traveling more than half the year for the next several years. I watched Marcus's face carefully as he processed this information. The old Marcus would have immediately started listing practical concerns, the cost of hiring staff, the risks of rapid expansion, the strain on our personal life. What do you think about all that? He asked instead. I think it's terrifying and exciting in equal measure. I think it's the kind of opportunity that could define my entire career. So you're going to pursue it? I think so. But Marcus, I need you to understand what that would mean for us, assuming there is still an us. Tell me. It would mean my career comes first for the next several years. It would mean significant changes to our lifestyle, our routines, our plans. It would mean I might miss family events, holidays, anniversary dinners. It would mean you'd have to be genuinely supportive of my success, not just tolerant of it. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. A year ago, that would have terrified me. And now I'm terrified of the alternative. I'm terrified of being the person who held you back from becoming everything you're capable of being. It was another right answer, but I still wasn't sure if it was genuine or performative. Words are easy, Marcus. Following through is harder. I know, which is why I want to show you something. He pulled out his phone and opened his email app. I sent this to my boss an hour ago. He handed me the phone and I read the email on the screen. Hi, Richard. I wanted to give you advance notice that my wife's consulting business is expanding significantly. She'll be traveling extensively for work over the next few years, and I want to be supportive of her career goal. I'd like to discuss shifting to a more flexible schedule, or possibly working remotely part-time, so I can manage more of our household responsibilities while she focuses on this opportunity. Let me know when we can discuss options. Best, Marcus. I stared at the email, then at Marcus. You sent this without talking to me first. I wanted to show you that I'm serious about supporting your career, even before I knew if we were going to work things out. What if your boss says no to flexible scheduling? Then I'll find a different job, one that allows me to be the kind of partner you deserve. For the first time since the therapy session, I felt a flicker of hope. Not hope that we could go back to the way things were, but hope that we might be able to build something new. That's a big gesture, Marcus. It's not a gesture, it's a decision. I've decided that your success is more important than my comfort zone. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Coffee later. I want to hear how you're processing everything. I showed Marcus the text. I'm meeting my sister this afternoon. She's been helping me think through all of this. What has she been telling you? That I should trust my instincts about what I need from a partnership. That I shouldn't settle for less than I deserve, just because someone finally decides to treat me well. Marcus nodded slowly. She's right. You shouldn't settle, even if that means our marriage doesn't survive. Even then, Sophia, I love you, but if the choice is between keeping you in a marriage that diminishes you, or letting you go so you can flourish, I choose your happiness over my own. I studied his face, looking for any sign that he was saying what he thought I wanted to hear. Instead, I saw something I hadn't seen in years: genuine respect for my autonomy. I need to think about this, I said finally. All of the business opportunities, our marriage, what I want my life to look like. How long do you need? I don't know, as long as it takes. And in the meantime, you continue with therapy. You follow through on what you told your boss. You prove that this change is real, not just a reaction to almost losing me. Marcus stood up to leave, then paused. Can I ask you something? What? If we do work this out, if we rebuild our marriage on better foundations, would you want that, or have I damaged things beyond repair? It was a fair question, and one I'd been asking myself for days. I don't know yet. I know I loved the man I married. I know I can't love the man you became. Whether the man you're becoming is someone I can build a life with, that remains to be seen. After Marcus left, I sat in my office, thinking about the conversation with Jennifer Walsh. The scale of opportunity she'd described was beyond anything I'd imagined when I started my consulting practice, but with that opportunity came risks and sacrifices that would fundamentally change my life. I called Emma and asked if we could meet earlier than planned. An hour later, we were sitting in our favorite coffee shop in Capitol Hill, the one with mismatched furniture and strong espresso. "You look different," Emma said, as soon as she saw me. "Different how?" "Strong, more sure of yourself, less apologetic." She was right. I'd spent so long making myself smaller to accommodate Marcus's discomfort that I'd forgotten what it felt like to take up space confidently. "I got another major contract offer today." I told her about the call with Jennifer Walsh, the potential for expansion, the millions in potential revenue. Emma listened without interrupting, then leaned back in her chair. "Holy shit, Sophia, you're about to become one of those people we read about in business magazines. It doesn't feel real yet, but you're going to do it." "I think so. The question is whether I do it alone or with Marcus." "What did he say when you told?" I described our morning conversation, Marcus's email to his boss, his commitment to therapy, his apparent willingness to restructure his life around my career. "That's a pretty dramatic turnaround," Emma said. "Do you believe it's genuine?" "I want to, but I'm scared of being disappointed again." "What would it take for you to trust that the change is real?" I thought about this carefully. Time, consistency, proof that he can handle my success without feeling threatened by it. And what if he can't? What if this supportive attitude lasts a few months, and then he reverts to his old patterns? Then I'll know I made the right choice by protecting my independence. Emma nodded. "You know what I think the real question is? Not whether Marcus has changed, but whether you want him to be part of this next chapter of your life. Even if he becomes the perfect supportive husband, do you actually want that? Or have you outgrown the marriage entirely?" It was a question I'd been avoiding, but Emma was right to ask it. "I don't know. The woman who married Marcus needed someone to share dreams with, to build a life with. But the woman I'm becoming, she might need something different." "Like what?" "Like a partner who challenges me professionally, not just personal. Like someone who brings their own ambition and success to the relationship instead of needing to manage mine." Marcus could still become that person, maybe, but should I wait around to find out? Should I put my life on hold while he figures out how to be the partner I needed him to be 3 years ago? Only you can answer that. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the afternoon crowd filter through the coffee shop. Young professionals on laptop calls, students studying for exams, couples having intense conversations over shared pastries. "Emma, can I tell you something I haven't admitted to anyone?" "Of course. I think I'm happier without Marcus than I was with him. These past few days, making decisions entirely for myself, not having to justify or defend my choices, it's been liberating." "That's not a small thing, Sophia." "No, it's not, and it makes me wonder if the marriage was holding me back more than I realized." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to accept the contract. I'm going to build the business I've been dreaming about, and I'm going to see if Marcus can genuinely support that journey or if he'll find new ways to undermine it. And if he undermines it, then I'll know our marriage is already over." I just hadn't admitted it yet. Emma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. You've built something incredible, and you've done it despite having a partner who was actively working against you. Imagine what you can accomplish with genuine support, or imagine what I can accomplish with complete freedom to focus on my goals." That too. As I walked back to my car, I felt a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The path forward might be uncertain, but for the first time, I was making choices based on what I wanted rather than what someone else could handle. It felt like coming alive after years of sleepwalk. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Walsh. "Sophia, I forgot to mention in our call today, if you accept the position, we'd like you to be the keynote speaker at the Pacific Northwest Healthcare Innovation Conference in September. The theme is Transforming Care Through Operational Excellence. Interested?" I typed back without hesitation. "Absolutely." 6 months ago, I would have consulted Marcus before accepting such a visible professional opportunity. I would have worried about his reaction, his comfort level, his opinion about whether I was ready for that kind of recognition. Now I was discovering what it felt like to be my own person again, and I liked it. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in the conference room at Pacific Northwest Healthcare Consortium, signing contracts that would change my life forever. Jennifer Walsh sat across from me with her legal team, while I had my newly hired attorney, Rebecca Kim, reviewing the final terms of what we'd started calling the expansion pack. So to confirm, Rebecca said, scanning the documents, the initial 18-month contract is $350,000, with performance bonuses that could bring it to $420,000. The licensing agreement for your optimization system starts at $500,000 annually, scaling up based on implementation success, and the multi-state expansion opportunity, pending pilot results, has a potential value of $4.2 million over 3 years. That's correct, Jennifer replied, and we're prepared to provide office space, initial staffing support, and a comprehensive benefits package for Sophia's employees. I signed my name on the final page, then sat back in the leather chair, trying to process what had just happened. In the span of 2 hours, I'd committed to building a consulting firm that could potentially generate more revenue in 3 years than most small businesses see in a decade. Congratulations, Sophia, Jennifer said, standing to shake my hand. You're about to transform healthcare delivery across the Pacific Northwest. As I walked out of the building, my phone was already buzzing with notifications. Dr. Martinez had texted congratulations. My accountant had called about restructuring my business entity. The software development team had emailed detailed questions about system specifications, but the message that stopped me in my tracks was from Marcus. Saw the news about your contract signing on Dr. Coleman's LinkedIn post. I'm so proud of you. Can we celebrate tonight? I stared at the text for a long moment. Dr. Coleman had posted about our partnership. I opened LinkedIn and found her post, thrilled to announce that my practice management consultant, Sophia Chen Williams, has signed a groundbreaking contract with Pacific Northwest Healthcare Consortium. Sophia's innovative approach to operational efficiency has transformed not just my practice, but dozens of healthcare facilities across our region. Her success story proves that expertise, persistence, and vision can create extraordinary opportunity. Congratulations to an exceptional professional who's just getting started. Healthcare Consulting Women in Business, Operational Excellence. The post had 63 likes and 12 comments, all from healthcare professionals I'd worked with over the past 2 years. People were sharing their own experiences working with me, describing specific improvements to their practices, and recommending my services to their colleagues. I scrolled through the comments, reading praise from clients I hadn't heard from in months. Dr. Robert Chen from the Urgent Care Clinic had written, "Sophia saved our business. 6 months after implementing her recommendations, our patient satisfaction scores increased by 40%, and our revenue grew by 35%. Sarah Williams, a family practitioner in Spokane, working with Sophia was the best investment I've made in my practice. Her systems thinking and practical solutions are unmatched in the industry. For the first time since starting my business, I was seeing the full scope of my impact. These weren't just contracts and payments, they were real improvements to real healthcare practices that served real patients. I had built something meaningful." My phone rang. "Marcus." "Hi," I answered, still processing the LinkedIn post. "Sophia, I just saw Dr. Coleman's post. The comments are incredible. I had no idea so many people knew about your work." "Neither did I. Honestly, I've been so focused on individual client relationships that I never stepped back to see the bigger picture. Can I take you to dinner to celebrate? I know we're still figuring things out, but this is huge, and you shouldn't celebrate alone." I hesitated. 2 weeks ago, the idea of celebrating with Marcus would have felt wrong, but something had shifted in our recent conversation. His therapy sessions seemed to be having an impact, and his support for my career decisions had been consistent. "Okay," I said finally, "but somewhere public, somewhere we can have a real conversation without the emotional weight of being in our house. How about that place in Fremont you like? The one with the good wine list, Café Luna?" "Yes, that works." 7 o'clock. When I arrived at the restaurant, Marcus was already seated at a corner table studying the wine menu. He stood when he saw me, and I noticed he looked better than he had in weeks, rested, less anxious, more like the man I'd fallen in love with. "You look beautiful," he said, pulling out my chair, "and successful." You're glowing. I feel different, I admitted, settling into my seat. More confident, maybe, more certain about who I am, and what I want. Marcus poured wine from a bottle he'd already ordered, a Pinot Noir from a winery we'd visited on our honeymoon. Tell me about the contract signing. What was it like? I described the morning's events, the legal negotiations, and the scope of the opportunities ahead. Marcus listened without interrupting, asking thoughtful questions about implementation timelines and staffing plans. So you'll need to hire employees fairly quickly, he said when I finished. At least 3 people in the next 6 months, a project manager, a data analyst, and probably an administrative coordinator, maybe more depending on how quickly the expansion opportunities develop. That's exciting and terrifying, I imagine, both. I've been a solo consultant for 2 years, managing employees, dealing with payroll and benefits, making decisions that affect other people's livelihoods. It's a completely different level of responsibility. You'll be great at it. You're already great at managing complex projects and client relationships. Leading a team is just an extension of those skills. It was exactly the kind of encouragement I'd been craving for 2 years. Hearing it now felt both wonderful and heartbreaking. Wonderful, because it was what I needed. Heartbreaking, because it had taken our marriage nearly ending for him to offer it. Marcus, can I ask you something? Anything? What's different now? Why are you able to support my success when you couldn't before? Marcus set down his wine glass and considered the question carefully. Therapy has helped me understand some things about myself, about why I was so threatened by your ambition, like the fact that I was raised to believe that a man's worth is measured by his ability to provide for his family. When you started succeeding financially, it challenged my sense of identity in ways I didn't understand. But lots of couples have dual careers. Lots of women out-earn their husbands. I know that intellectually, but emotionally, I was dealing with messages I absorbed as a kid. My dad left when things got financially tough, and I think I internalized the idea that financial stress destroys families. So when I was building my business, I saw risk instead of opportunity. I saw potential failure instead of actual success, and I projected my fears onto you instead of dealing with them myself. I appreciated his honesty, but I wasn't sure it changed anything fundamental. What happens the next time you feel threatened? What happens when my success challenges your comfort zone in ways we haven't anticipated yet? I don't know, Marcus said, and his honesty surprised me. I hope I'll handle it better. I hope therapy will have given me tools to recognize when I'm reacting from fear instead of responding from love. But I can't promise I'll be perfect. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for partnership. I'm asking for someone who sees my success as our success, not as a threat to their ego. I want to be that person. Wanting isn't enough anymore, Mark. I need to see consistent evidence that you actually are that person. Marcus nodded slowly. What would that evidence look like? I thought about this carefully. It would look like you are celebrating my wins without immediately pointing out potential problems. It would look like you are asking about my work because you're genuinely interested, not because you're looking for ways to manage or control it. It would look like you are making decisions that prioritize my career goals even when they're inconvenient for you. Like me talking to my boss about flexible scheduling. That was a good start, but Marcus, I need you to understand something. Even if you become the perfect supportive husband, even if you do everything right going forward, I might still decide that our marriage isn't what I want anymore. The words hung between us like a challenge. Marcus's face went through several emotions before settling on something that looked like acceptance. I understand, he said quietly. You've discovered who you are when you're not constantly defending yourself. And that person might not want to be married to me. I don't know yet, but I need the freedom to figure it out without pressure from you. How long do you need? I don't know that either. Maybe months, maybe long. Marcus was quiet for a long time, absently turning his wedding ring around his finger. Can I tell you what I've realized in therapy? Yes, I've realized that I fell in love with your ambition and your dreams, but then I spent years trying to talk you out of both. I loved that you were independent and driven, but then I tried to make you dependent on my approval. Why? Because I was scared. Scared that if you became too successful, you wouldn't need me anymore. Scared that if you achieved your dreams, you'd realize you could do better than settling for me. So you tried to keep me small? Yes. And I'm sorry. am sorry for every time I dismissed your work, every time I made you feel foolish for believing in yourself, every time I chose my comfort over your growth. It was the apology I'd been waiting with, but hearing it now felt different than I'd expected. Instead of relief or vindication, I felt sadness for all the time we'd lost, all the joy we'd missed, all the celebrations that had been tainted by his inability to simply be happy for me. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "It means something, even if it doesn't fix everything." "I know it doesn't fix everything, but I want you to know that I see you now. I see how brilliant you are, how hard you've worked, how much you've accomplished despite my lack of support. I see the woman I married, the one I loved enough to propose to, the one I somehow forgot how to cherish." Tears started forming in my eyes, but they weren't tears of reconciliation. They were tears of grief for the marriage we could have had if he'd been able to see me clearly from the beginning. "Marcus, I need to tell you something." "Okay." "I've spent the last 2 weeks thinking about what I want my life to look like. And I've realized the woman I'm becoming might not be compatible with being married to anyone right now." Marcus's face paled. "What do you?" "I mean that for the first time in my adult life, I'm making decisions based entirely on what I want. I'm building something that's completely mine. I'm discovering parts of myself that I never knew existed because I was always considering someone else's feelings or needs or comfort level. And you don't want to give that up." "I don't know if I can give that up. I don't know if I want to go back to being part of a we when being just me feels so powerful." Marcus set down his fork, his dinner barely touched. "So you're saying you want a divorce?" "I'm saying I want to continue this separation while I focus on building my business. I'm saying I want to see who I become when I'm not trying to manage someone else's reaction to my success." "For how long?" "I don't know. Maybe 6 months. Maybe a year. Maybe permanently." "And what about us? What about our marriage?" I looked at this man I'd loved for 6 years, this man who'd hurt me deeply and was now trying to change. This man who represented both my past and a potential future I wasn't sure I wanted. "Our marriage will be whatever it's supposed to be. If we're meant to be together, if you're able to become the partner I need, and I'm able to forgive the partner you were, then maybe we'll find our way back to each other. And if not, then we'll know we gave each other the greatest gift possible. The freedom to become who we're meant to be, even if that means being apart." Marcus nodded slowly, tears now visible in his eyes. "I love you enough to let you go, Sophia. I love you enough to want you to have everything you've ever dreamed of, even if I'm not part of it. I know you do. And that's the first time in 2 years that I've believed you really love me." We finished dinner in companionable silence, both of us processing what felt like the end of one story and the beginning of another. When the check came, Marcus insisted on paying. "It's the least I can do," he said. "Celebrating your success after spending 2 years trying to undermine it." As we walked to our cars, Marcus stopped and turned to face me. "Sophia, whatever happens between us, I want you to know something." "What?" "You're going to change people's lives with this work. You're going to make healthcare better for thousands of patients. You're going to build something extraordinary. And you deserve every bit of success that comes your way. Thank you. That means more than you know. Will you keep me updated on how the business grows, how the expansion goes, how you're doing? As friends, we can stay in touch as friends." Marcus smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached his eyes. "I'd like that." 3 months later, I was standing on stage at the Pacific Northwest Healthcare Innovation Conference, looking out at an audience of 400 healthcare professionals. My keynote presentation was titled, "From Solo Practice to System-Wide Excellence: A Journey in Operational Transformation." In the audience I could see familiar faces. Dr. Coleman, Dr. Martinez, several other clients, whose practices I'd helped optimize, but I could also see new faces. Potential clients, industry leaders who were hearing about my work for the first time. When I started my consulting practice 2 years ago, I began, I thought success meant making enough money to justify calling myself a business owner. I had no idea that real success would mean fundamentally changing how healthcare operates, one practice at a time. As I spoke about patient flow optimization, revenue enhancement strategies, and operational excellence, I felt a confidence that came from knowing my work had real impact. The numbers on my slides weren't just abstract metrics, they represented shorter wait times for patients, less stress for healthcare providers, and more efficient delivery of medical care. After my presentation, the networking reception was overwhelming. People approached me with business cards, project proposals, speaking opportunities, collaboration ideas. I'd become exactly what Marcus used to sarcastically call me, a successful entrepreneur. As I was packing up my materials, I noticed a familiar figure at the back of the room. Marcus, wearing a suit I'd never seen before, holding a small bouquet of flowers. I made my way over to him, curious about his presence. "What are you doing here? I wanted to hear your keynote. Dr. Coleman mentioned you were speaking, and I hoped you wouldn't mind if I came to support you." "You sat through a healthcare conference just to hear me speak." "I sat through a healthcare conference to see you in your element, to see you doing what you were meant to do." He seemed different, more relaxed, more confident in his own skin. "How have you been?" "Good. Really good. Actually, the therapy has been helpful. I've been working on understanding myself better, figuring out how to be a whole person instead of half of a couple. And I got the flexible schedule approved. I've been working from home 3 days a week, which has given me time to think about what I actually want from life." "What do you want?" Marcus smiled. "I want to be proud of myself the way I'm proud of you right now. I want to build something meaningful with my life. I want to be the kind of person who deserves to be partnered with someone as extraordinary as you." "Are you saying you want to try again?" "I'm saying I'm becoming someone who might be worthy of trying again. But only if that's what you want. Only if you've discovered that you want partnership along with independence." I looked around the conference hall, at the evidence of everything I'd built, everything I'd achieved. Then I looked at Marcus, who'd driven 2 hours to hear me speak, who'd brought flowers to celebrate my success, who was asking for a chance to be part of my life without demanding it. "I don't know what I want yet," I said honestly, "but I like who you're becoming, and I like who I've." "Maybe that's enough to start with." "Maybe it is." 6 months later, Marcus and I were sitting in Dr. Coleman's office again, but this time the dynamic was completely different. We were there as 2 individuals who were choosing to build a partnership, not as a broken couple trying to salvage something that was already lost. "How would you describe your relationship now?" Dr. Coleman asked. "We're dating," I said with a smile. "After 6 years together and 4 years of marriage, we're dating. It's strange and wonderful," Marcus added, "getting to know Sophia as the successful business owner she's become, rather than trying to fit her into the box I created for her." "And Sophia, how does it feel to be in a relationship with Marcus while maintaining your independence?" "It feels like having the best of both worlds. I have someone who genuinely celebrates my success, who asks thoughtful questions about my work, who supports my decisions even when they're inconvenient for him. But I also have my own space, my own identity, my own achievements that belong entirely to me." Dr. Coleman nodded approvingly. "You've both done significant work, individually and together. Marcus, you've learned to see Sophia's success as an asset to your relationship rather than a threat. And Sophia, you've learned to maintain your sense of self within a partnership. The question now," Marcus said, "is whether we want to make this permanent again." "Do you?" Dr. Coleman asked. Marcus and I looked at each other, these 2 people who'd almost destroyed each other through misunderstanding and fear, who'd found their way back to love through independence and growth. "I think so," I said. "But this time we built something new together. This time, we both come to the marriage as whole people who choose to share our lives, not as incomplete people who need each other to feel complete." "I want that too," Marcus said. "I want to marry the woman you've become, not try to change you back into someone smaller." A year later, I was featured on the cover of Pacific Northwest Business Journal, with the headline "Healthcare Revolutionary: How One Consultant is Transforming Medical Practice Operations." The accompanying article detailed my company's growth to 15 employees, expansion into 4 states, and partnerships with major healthcare systems across the region. But the quote that meant the most to me was buried in the middle of the article. Chen Williams credits her success to learning the difference between support and management. My husband now cheers for my victories instead of predicting my failures. That shift in partnership dynamic was everything. Because in the end, that's what it all came down to. Not the money, or the recognition or the professional accolades, but having a partner who saw my dreams as worth pursuing, and my success as worth celebrating. The business card that Dr. Coleman placed on her coffee table that day had been more than proof of my professional competence. It had been a catalyst for discovering who I was when I stopped apologizing for my ambitions and started embracing them fully, and that discovery had changed everything. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now, and hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest upload.